Welcome to Bible in the Backyard. Here we are in Sefer Dvarim, Perek Yud Aleph, chapter 11 of Deuteronomy, and we're back to the theme of the environment and ecology and the religious significance and relationship between the ecological circumstances and the land. And in this chapter, the contrast is not with the land of what was in the wilderness and the reliance on man, but with what will be. And we are told that unlike in Egypt, where you can water the fields with your feet, in Canaan, in Israel, you'll be totally dependent on the rain. So I kind of want to think about that terminology. What does it mean to say that in Egypt they watered the fields with their feet?
Yeah, so I actually don't know of any direct evidence for this practice, but the image at least is of an irrigation ditch, right? So the source of water in Egypt is the Nile, right? It doesn't rain in Egypt. So the Nile floods every year, and the Egyptians were entirely dependent on it, but it's really amazingly regular until, now it's dammed up, but until it was very regular. You could count on it, you measured it, they lived in terror of it under flooding or over flooding, but then you could actually literally, move a little barrier and open the irrigation ditch, and the water would then flow into your field. So you could reliably water your field. You weren't dependent on the very unreliable and unpredictable rains. Actually, there's a great Egyptian text, a hymn by the king Akhenaten. So his terms are all reversed, right? For him, the Nile is normal, and rain is weird. So he thanks the god Aten for creating a, quote, Nile in the sky for the lands of Canaan, said they could have water as well. They don't have a Nile, but at least sometimes water mysteriously falls from the sky. But again, this goes back to something we talked about 3 days ago, that once you get to Canaan, you don't have that reliability, right? So the Nile, you do have to wait for the flood, but it's a massive river that will water your field if all is regular. In Canaan, you're entirely dependent on the very unpredictable rains. And again, that really shapes the religious mentality. It's certainly easier to think of dependence on God when you literally don't know whether your field will grow anything this year.
There's also, there's the strong element of reliance. There's also an element of creativity in if you are not sure, right, and you can't rely on the irrigation happening the way that it does in Egypt. You have to be more creative in anticipating how you'll feed, right? How you'll feed and grow food if you can't rely on it. So there's this sort of empowerment that comes from the reliance.
So that actually strikes me as a modern way of thinking. I think in ancient times they basically are like, if it doesn't rain, we don't have food. They weren't thinking about how do we import water from elsewhere. You know from the stories of Jacob and his tribes. No food here, you go to Egypt, that's the breadbasket, that's almost always going to have some food. But it's true, in theory it could be empowering. I think in practice in the ancient world, it was actually a sense of helplessness.
And humbling.
Yeah, very.
Thank you.